Y'all won't believe who I have sitting next to me today. Andrea Burks. She helps women overcome their challenges by giving them the tools that she uses on a daily basis that help her along her healing journey. She provides wellness resources. She is the Hope Jar community leader, the author of the HTV Journal. She's the creator of the HTV brand. HTV stands for Healing Through Vulnerability. She is an empowerment strategist. She's a public speaker. She's a strong, devout mental health advocate. And her whole thing is basically breaking the stigma associated with mental illness, because society oftentimes places people with mental illnesses inside of a box. And they'll say things like, well, whatever they say, don't listen to it. Don't take it seriously. Or this person is incapable of exercising sound judgment. This person is incapable of espousing good values, principles, and morals. But Andrea basically, she puts all of that to rest. She disproves all of those notions because she's been able to manage her suffering and her stress that is related to her past traumas. She's been able to do it so much so that she's able to live a productive life. And she's helping people every day by telling her story and inspiring other people and giving them the courage to tell their stories as well, and to heal through vulnerability. So I'm so happy to have her on here. I'm excited to get into her story. I was so drawn to her story. When I researched her, whatever I was going through in that moment, it didn't matter. And those are the type of people that inspire you, because they make you forget about your own problems and give you the motivation and the courage to tackle your challenges. And I'm just excited to get into this. So how are you doing today, Andrea?
I am good, doing very well. Thank you so much for having me on here, David. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. I listen, you reached out, and at first, like I said, we went to high school together. We went to Cass Tech, and I really came to know you senior year, and I just didn't know your story. But once I got into it, it was almost like it was something telling me, probably God. I'm sure it was God. Like, no, you gotta talk to her.
Yes.
And I was afraid to at first.
hmm
So out of maybe you're the 22nd person I've had a conversation with. I'm the most nervous about this one, just because of how serious the subject matter is.
hmm
So I want to get into your whole life. I want to go from childhood. What house do you remember growing up in Detroit? Because you grew up in Detroit,
I
right?
did, yes. So I grew up on Woodmont between Grand River and Schoolcraft.
Okay.
It's the Grandmont community right outside of Rosedale Park.
Oh, okay. That's a good
Yeah,
area.
it was a really good area.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So we had a 3-bedroom house. Our block and community, we were like very close. So we knew all our neighbors. We had business owners, we had teachers, we had just finance people. So we grew up, it was pretty much a middle class, upper middle class area. It was really nice. So
Wow. Wow. Okay. So who was in the house?
So I had my mom and dad. My
Hmm.
dad was in finance. He worked in banking for over 30 years
Hmm.
before he retired. And my mom was a manager with the real estate development for City of Detroit. So she worked there for a little over 30 years before she retired as well.
No siblings?
I have two siblings, two younger sisters. One is a year younger than me, and then I have a baby sister who's 8 years younger than me. So it's
Okay.
three of us.
Three of us. Okay, got you. So that's a house of five, pretty much.
Yes.
Okay. And you said you have a younger sister who's a year younger. So
Yes.
you guys were obviously closer, I'm
Yeah,
assuming.
we were closer. We did everything together. Except high school. She ended up going to Mercy High School.
Mercy. Okay. Okay. Yeah, yeah.
And then I went to Cass, but we were literally a year apart. And we ended up eventually going to college together. So we had an off-campus apartment, and we lived together maybe up until we graduated, and I went off to grad school, and she moved back home. So, but all three of us are very, very close.
Mm.
We've always been very close. We travel together. We do everything together. She's married now, so she's the only one that's married, and she has my nephew, so she's the only one with a child right
Oh,
now.
wow. Cool.
So,
Yeah.
but we're all very close knit. Anytime any one of us needs each other, we're literally a phone call away.
Wow. Wow. Okay. That's good. What about your mother and father? Still very close to them to this day?
So my father passed in August of 2019.
Okay.
He died of a massive stroke. That was his second one. And then my mother, still very close. We still travel with her. I see my mom every day. She's my last parent, so I make sure make sure that she's okay. And so we're all still very, very. It's always been the four of us, and so with my nephew added, now it's the five of us. So
Wow. Okay. So at Cass Tech, when I remember seeing you, I didn't notice anything different looking on the outside in. You were smart, uh, had personality. You fit in pretty much with everybody else. And I remember in researching your story that you didn't really know anything was up until you turned about 19, right?
right.
But when you look back, do you remember signs of things sort of going left in high school based on things that had happened in high school? Like, what was your experience like in high school?
So I was always very shy. I went to a very small private school. I think it was like 18 people in our class, and so to get in the cast was very trauma filled for
Oh,
me.
wow, wow, because that's like the
It
real
was
world. Yeah, yeah,
huge.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
like a huge class. I was like, wait a minute, it's 900 of us in this
Nine.
class.
Hey, everybody, Cass Tech. There was 900 people in our class. It started that way. I think
Yes,
we ended with around
like
four or
four
something,
something.
four or something, and the total amount of kids in Cass Tech was like 4,000.
Yes,
So
and it was
yeah, and
overwhelming.
daunting. It could be, yeah, scary.
Yes.
Yeah.
I went from wearing uniforms and knowing everybody and their parents to not knowing anybody because no one came from my school to cast. It was literally just me.
Wow.
And so I was like, I don't know if I'm going to survive here because I don't know how to make friends. And so what I noticed is that I did have anxiety issues in
And
high
when
school.
you look back, you like, oh, that was
Yes,
anxiety.
I
Okay.
that was extreme anxiety because I never put anything in a locker. My first 2 years, I literally was the kid with the big book bag. Like so, all my books were in my book
Why?
bag.
Why didn't you put it? Because you were afraid somebody would
I
take it,
was
or?
and I was scared to be late for class. I didn't know how to use the
Oh.
locker. I was scared to be around people, and so I just felt if I kept everything with me, I could get to school on time. Nobody would bully me. Going to my locker, I wouldn't be late. So everything was very anxiety driven at that time. I didn't realize that it was such extreme social anxiety until I hit adulthood and I started showing symptoms of it later on.
So you said bullying. Were you bullied in school? Well, before you got to high school?
I was
Wow.
bullied
Okay.
heavily in middle school. I was the girl with bifocal glasses. I have flat feet, so I had the arches in my shoes.
Hmm.
I'll never forget, like in middle school, I had a guy in my class, and I don't know what I did to him because I was always very shy and
Yeah.
quiet. And the first thing he said to me was, you're gonna be never get married, you're fat and you're ugly, nobody's gonna want you. And it stayed with me. It was like something I internalized my entire life. Just that one thing from him. And I was like, wow. And so every day, like going to gym, I was bullied for my weight. I developed bulimia at 13. I had an eating disorder because he would say, look, you're getting fat. And so I was scared to eat lunch. And if I was forced to eat it, then I would take care of it after lunch.
This was
Like
in middle school.
this was in middle school.
Wow. So now, okay, there's a picture of you, and it's I'm sure it wasn't captured in real time, but it was more of an illustration to show how you felt at a particular time, right? And you were sitting down, you looked stressed and overwhelmed. You were covered with sticky notes,
Yes.
and on the sticky notes, one message was liar, crazy, psycho, hoe, slut, unlovable, kill yourself. Nobody wants you. I'm only with you for sex. I can't be around you if you continue to cry.
Yeah.
So was when you go back to that time where the guy was teasing you because of your size, which caused you to stop eating lunch, was that a part of those memories?
Yeah.
Wow.
When at any age,
Or was it a part of that picture that I saw with the sticky notes? That was, yeah.
it was a part of all the things that had been said to me over time.
Over time. Got you. Powerful picture though. Yeah.
Thank you. Alicia, Hunter is the one
Oh
that captured
man,
it.
yeah, she does pictures for Jason Phillips too.
Yes,
She's
yes,
cold. Yeah, shout out
yes.
to Alicia Hunter, and actually she's my cousin.
Oh,
We
okay,
found that out
yes.
while we both were in detention in high school.
Okay.
Found it out. That's crazy. Anyway, go
Yes,
ahead.
because I wanted to show people exactly what was being said to me, and how I internalized it. A lot of people don't know, like, I was molested at 8 years old by
8.
a cousin. Yes,
Oh
he was
wow.
16. He would come over our house every weekend because his father was never like in the picture. And so my dad wanted to present that father figure for him. And so
Wow.
he
Yeah.
would kind of like come over every weekend and we would go to church and things like that. And I'll never forget in that moment when I did not feel safe. It was almost like, why wasn't no one there to protect me? I was like crying out for help. He had me in this dark place. I never forget what I wore that day. But it was the day I silenced myself. I was scared to say anything about anyone hurting me, anyone doing anything to me. I was just afraid of the backlash that I would get. I was scared to be blamed for something that I was not responsible for doing. Because you trust your family members, you trust your cousin, you trust, especially male cousins, they're supposed to be there to protect you. And in that moment, I was not protected. He harmed me.
Yeah.
And so I'll never forget that day. It was the day that I totally shut down and I did not trust the world.
Wow.
I internalized everything from that day going forward.
Wow. Wow. So wow. 8 years old. Okay. So when did you finally tell your parents about that?
My mom didn't find out until I was 30.
30. Okay.
I carried that secret for years. I feel like sometimes like my dad would notice when we would do family gatherings, like why I would not want to be in a room with him.
Wow.
But I was just always so nervous that it was going to happen again. And I was scared that because as he got older, he got bigger. So it was like he was going to overpower me in these small spaces. And I didn't think anyone would believe me. So I think sometimes my dad would notice, but I was just always scared to say anything. I didn't want to break the family dynamic. Like, well, why are you blaming your cousin for this? Why were you in here? No, he didn't really do that. These are things that you hear as a young girl that, people don't really want to believe that your family can hurt you. And for me, I just got to a point where it was like, there's no point. My breaking point came at 30 because I was in an extremely abusive relationship. And because the traumas were starting to pile on, I couldn't conceal them anymore. And so I was starting to show extreme signs of my depressive disorder. I was going to work and I was starting to space out at my desk. I was in relationships and I was starting to have trigger moments or impulsive moments in front of my abusive ex. And then I was starting to show extreme distrust towards family. So I had my own apartment and I lived over an hour away. I lived in Jackson, Michigan for a while. And my mom could never get a hold of me. She couldn't understand why at one point she could call and I would literally pick up. And then for a while, for like a month, she would call and get sent to voicemail to the point where her and my sisters would drive up to my apartment, ask the leasing office for a copy of the key or to be let in my door because they wouldn't hear from me. They were scared I had done something to myself. And it was just because I just didn't know how to express exactly what I was dealing with. My ex had brought up that trauma moment for me. And I just remember being in that room at 8, being molested by my cousin because
You said your ex brought it up?
yeah, he brought it up. Because before I used to, like, when I would date, I would tell people,
Hey, this is what happened. Yeah.
yeah, like, this is my story. This is what happened to me at 8. I'm a little skeptical and sometimes a little shy and scared to be around men.
Just so that they can understand that, hey, if I'm acting a certain way or reacting a
Exactly.
certain way, you're just giving them context. Yeah.
Right. And it was his way of kind of pushing a button with me.
Yeah, because sometimes they can use that against you too, right?
Exactly. And so it had gotten to a point where it was like, do I really want to keep telling people what my traumas are? Because no one's taking it seriously. Because if I tell someone my traumas, I'm expecting them to keep it close to fist.
Not to
Like,
weaponize it.
exactly.
Yeah. So let's go back really quick. Okay, so in high school, I remember you being in a relationship. We don't have to get into it too much, but did you notice that past trauma? Like, did it affect that relationship? Did it affect how you reacted and how you behaved in that relationship? Or, did it affect your ability to trust that person? Did you even notice it then in high school?
I did. I started showing signs of my depression and distrust towards any type of relationship when my relationship was coming to an end in high school.
Ah, got you. Okay.
I was cheated on right before prom. And, this person lied, and I was just like, wow, right before prom, to me, I just didn't understand it. I noticed my inability to cope with change because it was almost like, okay, he's breaking up with you. Why can't you let it go? You're a beautiful person. You're smart. You're getting ready to go off to college.
So you couldn't walk away.
I just didn't understand like why I could not like disconnect. Yeah, we had been in a relationship for a year and a half, but he literally had cheated on me. So it wasn't it wasn't like, yeah, well, why can't you walk away, girl? He cheated on you. He's still lying about it. Why can't you let it go? I didn't understand my ability to say, this is part of my mental health struggle. Abandonment is a huge issue for me. And I didn't understand that until
couldn't communicate that at that time.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I
didn't even understand it.
No. I was literally like, I started showing major symptoms like right before prom. So like a month before prom, I stopped eating. I was a dancer, so I would do like classical dance, and my dance instructor started to notice I was losing 20 to 25 pounds. She was like, you're extremely small all of a sudden. And I said, well, I don't have an appetite. And she said, well, why aren't you eating? I said, I can't. Emotionally and mentally, I cannot bring myself to eat. It's almost like internally, I just wanted to not live because I was like, I was embarrassed. It's like, well, who am I going to go to prom with? People knew about our relationship at that point. And it was like, how do you explain this? What you did. It was like, I felt like I wasn't enough for someone to be able to do that. And then now I can't cope. And then I look like the crazy one because I don't understand, or I can't make the connection as to why this had happened. Because it was like, I was questioning myself. I'm not enough. So that's why he cheated. I can't get close to him the way he wants me to get close because of what happened to me in my childhood.
So you went into the relationship probably not feeling as worthy just based on what had happened when you were a child.
Exactly.
I got you. Exactly. Oh, man. Okay. So you graduate. You still went to prom.
I still went to prom.
You still went to prom.
I still showed up.
Yeah, you still showed up despite what had happened, right? And you ended up going to Eastern Michigan University. See, that's another reason why you can't just castigate or label people who have a mental illness, because again, you got your bachelor's from Eastern Michigan University in communications and marketing.
Yes.
You got your master's in public and health administration.
Yes.
From the same school.
Same school.
Right. And you had challenges there too, right?
I sure did.
Okay, go ahead. Let's talk about it.
So when I got to Eastern, well, I went to a Christian college at first because I was growing up. We were raised deeply in the church, and I got a partial scholarship to go to this college called Anderson University.
Anderson University.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, great. Like I'm going away. This is a fresh start for me. But I struggled heavily there. I just could not find my footing. I did not fit in. It was like a small handful of Black people there.
Yeah.
And they literally were like icing me out. And I couldn't figure out why. I was like, well,
you can't be a part of our group.
Right. They were like, well, you're from Detroit. You're supposed to be acting a certain way. You talk too proper.
Man.
You don't do this. And I was like, well, wait a minute. What's your idea of what people from Detroit are like? Because the people I grew up with, we're all very smart. We don't hang out on the block like that.
They enunciate their words, all of that. Yeah.
I come from a very, very good high school. So I was confused as to why that was like a major issue, because they wanted me to be one way and I just was not that way.
Yeah.
So I was like, what is going on? So I tried to be friends with the people there. And I remember I was stressed because I was a pre-med major at the time.
Oh, pre-med. Wow.
Yeah, I
Okay.
wanted to go be a doctor. That
Yeah.
was my life dream.
Wow.
And I never forget, I was like really discouraged in class one day. Like I was failing my bio class, I was failing my chemistry class, and I was like, I don't understand because I was really good with science in high school. So it's like, why am I struggling so bad? And why do I feel so isolated and alone? And I wasn't getting along with my dad at the time. He was upset that I had decided to go to Anderson. He wanted me to go to Eastern to begin with.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, Dad, they're offering me a scholarship. It's a smaller
They
school.
paying.
They're,
I don't have
you
to
know
come
what I
out,
mean?
owing any loans and all that stuff. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
So I was like, let's just give it a shot. Let's try it for 1 year. If I don't like it, I'll just transfer back. He was not happy. My dad cut me off. So I didn't talk to my dad for like 6 months. I just remember going through so many changes during that time, still reeling from what happened like the end of high school. Now like all this stuff is like piling on. I was like, I'm tired. I don't want to do this. I remember being in my dorm at 19, ready to just be done. So I'll never forget that day. Like I called one of my friends or associates and I said, I need you to get a hold of my cousin because I'm not going to be here and I need someone to come find me so they can let my parents know what happened to me. And she was like, well, what are you talking about? I said, look, just do what I asked you to do.
Whoa. Whoa. Yeah.
When I came to, I was in the hospital, I was in ICU. All I remember is the doctor saying, what did you take? What did you take? And I was like, well, what are you talking about? I couldn't remember. I just remember I was in an emotional space, but I didn't remember exactly after that, like what I had done. It was like almost like I blacked out during that period. I spent a small window like in intensive care getting treated, and then they let me go. No mental hospital, no psychiatrist help, no therapist. They just sent me back to school.
Wow.
But because I went to a Christian college, they had that's a big no-no is to self-harm.
Wow.
It's
Yeah.
against their policy. And so I was mandated to go to therapy. And I was like, okay, well, I'll go, but I don't think it's going to help, but I'll go. And so I started therapy for the very first time at 19. I was actually put on medication during that time. It was Paxil. Paxil makes you feel nothing.
Wow. Wow.
It's not as, now we have so many different meds you can take. But Paxil, I had no emotion on it.
Wow.
I couldn't laugh. I couldn't cry.
So you were basically a shell of yourself.
I was a
taking it.
zombie.
Yeah.
I'll never forget I had someone cracking a joke and they didn't understand why I wasn't laughing.
Wow.
And they said, well, why won't you laugh? And I said, what are you talking about? What's funny? And I was like, no, this joke is hilarious. And I'm sure it was.
You couldn't
but
process
I just couldn't
it.
process the hilarity behind it. So I was sitting there staring in the space. And I was like, it's got to be the medications because I usually laugh at a lot of things. I feel your emotion. I'm empathetic. So I'll feel your emotion. I couldn't feel anything. My dad would call. My mom would call. And they were like, you just sound like life is sucked out of you, like life has left you.
Wow. But that was the first medication they put you on.
That was the very first one.
And obviously, since then, there's more options. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I took myself off.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay.
My doctor was like, are you crazy?
Was this while you were still at
Yes.
that college, at the Christian college?
It was still while I was at the Christian college. My doctor and my therapist said, well, you're not supposed to wean yourself off. I said, well, I can't go through life not feeling anything. I understand why I'm on it.
Yeah.
But this is not stability.
This
to
ain't
me.
it. Yeah.
We need to
Yeah.
find something else. So they said, well, if you don't want to take these medications, you're going to have to go home at the end of the semester. And I said, that's perfectly fine. So that was my first and last year there. So I transferred to Eastern.
I know your daddy was.
He was ecstatic. When I tell
He was like, yes.
he didn't even wait till my last final. He had the moving van out. He said, we can ready to pack up your dorm right now. I said, Dad, I got one more test. He said, it's okay. I'm going to pick you up from the class.
So,
we going to hit the road.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he was happy because I was at home.
Yeah.
He got my sister and I in an off-campus apartment. So for a while I was at Eastern, I had stability. I still was going to see my psychiatrist. I had found a psychiatrist there. We had found a better medication. I don't remember the name, but I was feeling a little bit more normal.
I got you. Not 100%.
Not
But enough
100%.
to where people wouldn't be like, hey, why you
Notice
not laughing?
anything.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Exactly. Because I was just so fearful that people would start noticing like strange behavior, and then I would start this whole stigmatized process all over again. People want to ice me out. They won't want me to be in their organization. They won't want me
Oh,
to.
man, it's real cliquish in
Yeah,
college. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And so I said, if I can just get through the last 4 years of college or the last 3 years of college, I could feel like I've accomplished something despite all that I've been through so far.
Gotcha.
So for a while, I just kept what happened my freshman year very quiet. No one knew except my family. I took my medication. I went to class. I found a major I actually enjoyed. I had internships, so I interned with TV20 for a little while as a production assistant, and
Cause so you didn't the pre being a doctor was something that you wanted to do, but you realized like I don't really have an interest in this, and then once you took or went the communications and marketing route, you found that you actually really enjoyed it.
I didn't realize I had like a gift in it.
Yeah.
Because I was always shy, and so people were like, communications and marketing.
You
like,
never talk.
oh,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So it's like, what are you? But I have an eye for things, and I think that's kind of what helped me. And then when I got my internship with TV20,
Wow, yeah, yeah.
I was actually offered a full-time gig after graduation, but it didn't pay enough. So, so it's like, let me just no.
Yeah.
But my production supervisor was like, you have an eye for television, film, and production. You need to focus on what your gifts are.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I don't understand. What do you mean? She was like, you have such a creative space in your mind. You need to tap into it. It wasn't until like later on that I realized part of my mental health struggles is that a lot of us have have artistic gifts. And it's part of what keeps our anxiety and our depression at bay.
So if you don't express it, then it piles up.
Exactly. And so film and production and things like that help me express what's going on inside, and then I get to see it put together. It's like a puzzle. Get to see the visual of it. And it actually helps with the anxiety.
Yeah,
So it's why it kind of catapulted me to where I am now. But I didn't realize that all that stuff was like a component of what I actually mentally deal with every single day.
Yeah, I remember you said something. You said healing requires you to find out what your purpose is, live within it in order to progress forward. And that's like so important because that's like you can't start your healing journey or at least walk in it unless you know what your purpose is.
Right.
So it kind of ties back to what you said about the importance of being able to express yourself artistically in order to minimize the amount of anxiety and the depression and those other things. So that's powerful.
I don't think people know that, like because I've been hospitalized because of my mental health. I was hospitalized back in 2014 for depression. And then I was hospitalized again in 2022 for depression and my attempt. And
that was another attempt?
yes, so
Okay. So hold on one second. Okay, so now go ahead. I want you to complete what you just said.
So I'm a 4-time suicide
Four
survivor.
times? Wow.
My last time was May of 2022. My very first time was at 19. A lot of people go, well, why do you keep...
Then you said 30 was another time. Okay,
yes,
right. Okay,
30. So I had like a partial one in April of last year. I attempted, and then the very, very last one was the most severe out of all 4 of them.
And you said a lot of people said, why do you
keep attempting? So my official diagnosis is Major Depressive Disorder. It's just a severe version of depression. I don't have any bipolar components to it or anything like that. No personality disorders or schizophrenia. It's just straight severe depression. I also suffer with generalized anxiety and social anxiety. So I am officially diagnosed with both.
And complicated
And
grief.
complicated grief because I've watched 7 family members die, and my dad being the most traumatic, I watched him die in front of me.
Oh, you said he had heart disease and a massive stroke, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So what? So okay. So when you graduate from Eastern Michigan, did you get your master's right after your bachelor's, or you did? You went straight through?
I went straight. So I took 6 months off, and I was like, I want to see what this life is like. And I was like, oh God, I need a job. But I couldn't. It was hard to find one in my degree field.
Yeah.
So yes, I went back to graduate school. But the thing about it is, it took me 10 years to finish.
Gotcha.
I was on track, but I got into a relationship. And I ended up moving to Jackson, Michigan. And I needed to work because he wasn't bringing in enough money.
So you became a case manager, right?
I started off in healthcare.
Healthcare. Okay,
Yes,
got you. Okay.
I did healthcare for a little bit. I was a scheduler. I hated that job, but I did it for 2 years. It was horrible. But yes, the position came across with the state of Michigan. I ended up being a case manager. And
In a domain welfare?
Yes.
I think, yeah.
Welfare department.
In the welfare domain. Sorry. Yep. Okay.
Yep. I did that for about 8 years. I ended up getting a job in Richmond. So I moved there. I was a supervisor for the welfare department down there. And then my dad got sick. He starting to get calls from the doctor like, well, your dad's not showing up, and he had a mini stroke. I didn't realize he was that sick when I moved. My dad was always very secretive when it came to his health. And I think that's part of like where I got it from. It was like, you never wanted to say anything.
Like suffering in silence.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh my God. Well, the opportunity to finish my degree came up as well. So I said, okay, well, I need to get back home. I talked to my director because they were like fighting for me to get here. They were offering me bigger bonuses to come to this job. And so they were shocked that I was like, I have to move back home, because they were thinking, okay, well, you stay here long enough, we can get you to a higher paying gig. And so that's what they were gearing me up for. And I was like, I have to go back. My dad needs me. My parents were divorced at that time. It was not a pretty divorce. And I was like, my dad has nobody. I'm the oldest. I have to take the hit and go back home.
So they got divorced when you guys were already
I was in college.
You were in college,
okay. And so I
well, your younger sister was still there.
Right. And it wasn't healthy for her either. So I was like, I need to, I gave my mom my blessing. I was like, at this point, it's okay. I hated seeing my parents separate because to me, I'm such a person that's into marriage, like in commitment, and to kind of see theirs in the way that it did, it was not a healthy split. I was kind of sad by it.
Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of interesting too, because you see two people love each other, bring 3 beautiful children into the world. And then it's like, now you guys, where's the love? You guys hate each other now, right? So yeah, that can be traumatizing in itself.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
I didn't realize my dad was such a complicated man until I became an adult. Because I didn't understand like why my mom was always like constantly upset about stuff that he was doing. Because parents try to hide stuff.
Oh yeah, they go in that bedroom and you hear them arguing, but they keep it light. Yeah,
exactly. But I didn't understand like sometimes like why my mom was doing certain things. Like it was almost like she had to move quietly or secretly for stuff. I didn't realize like my dad was. I loved him, but he was an abusive man. He was very verbally abusive. He did not do commitment very well. He cheated a lot. I didn't realize that he was such a serial cheater until they were going through the divorce.
So the way he was with your mother was different than his relationship with you guys,
exactly.
Which made it hard to
it was
notice
very
that.
Hard.
Yeah,
exactly. Because I love my dad. When you say daddy's girl, that was me.
Yeah.
I feel like my picture was like next to that because my dad was always there. He was a businessman. He was in finance. I never wanted for anything. I didn't have to work through college. My dad paid for everything. So vacations, we took those. We had family vacations.
Yeah.
So it was like to see or hear this stuff come out, towards.
It was a shock
I was
because he was high functioning.
a
Yeah.
very high functioning. I started to understand why my dad was the way he was because my grandfather was that. It was like a genetic thing. It was like passed down from male to male in our family.
Yeah. Yeah.
I realized that my dad felt like he had to overcompensate for something. And he suffered with mental illness. Part of my mental illness is genetics. It's all through my dad's side of the family.
So you were more prone to it anyway,
I was,
right?
yes.
And then certain things happened that triggered it.
Exactly, exactly. And I don't think my dad really wanted to take ownership of that. He was always like one of those really strong,
Prideful,
yes. And it was like, Dad,
No accountability. Like I
nothing.
can't even acknowledge that I was that wrong or that I could have
Exactly.
caused this divorce
Exactly.
or maybe even caused some of the issues that you ended up developing, right?
Yeah. And it was a hard pill for him to swallow because as I got older, I started to become more vocal.
Yeah.
And this was a hard conversation my dad and I had to have with each other because he was just really under the belief that I didn't have any issues, didn't suffer with depression, I didn't have mental illness, I didn't have anxiety issues. He was like really under that impression that it did not exist.
In denial.
He was in denial. And I was like, Dad, are you paying attention? Like, I had an unalive attempt at 19. I am struggling heavily now at 30. I don't understand, like, what else do you need to see? I'm not myself. Something is wrong. I have to see a psychiatrist to function. I have to be on medication to function.
Yeah.
He was like, well, I don't know what's wrong with you. Maybe it's just stress. And I was like, but stress and everything else, there's something more severe going on. I begged my dad one day to come to therapy with me. I was like, my therapist wants both my parents to come. I was like, they want you to see or hear what's really going on with me. And my dad was like, I'm not going. There's nothing wrong with you. We're going to pray it away and you're going to work and you're going to be normal and you're going to get a husband and you're going to have kids and we're in the subject.
That seems so. To your dad's defense, I think that generation just because mental health is now very much it's less taboo.
Yes.
More people are talking about it. More people are getting help. More people are talking to psychiatrists on a weekly or monthly basis, right? Who haven't even been diagnosed with anything. But that generation just, it was hard for them to sort of conceptualize and accept that, I think, right?
Right. I think it's because back then you have a mental health issue, they put you in a hospital, and then there's this stigma with being in the hospital. Like, people think you're in straitjackets, you're a zombie, you're...
Oh, right. So society wasn't that kind to you at that time. Like, as it is now. It's better now.
It's better now.
Yeah.
But it was like, wait, you have an issue and you're letting her walk around, so for him it was like, you don't have no problems. And I was like, well, Dad, yes I do. I was accepting of my struggles early on. I knew it was something not right with me.
Wow.
I didn't put on the facade that nothing was wrong. I think people just didn't really want to acknowledge it because I could present very well. I could sit and laugh and go to class and be a normal student.
I mean, you was getting degrees and stuff like. So, what I guess my question is, what gave you the courage to accept it at such an early age and just, go to see your therapist routinely and take the medication? I think you said Paxil, right? That they gave you at that time. What made you accept it so easily? Because you could have been, how youthful and ignorant we are and invincible we think we are. But at that time, you embraced it.
Yes.
So what drove you to embrace it at such an early age or embrace getting the help you needed?
I wanted to feel better.
Yeah.
People assume all of us want to walk around sad all the time.
Right.
It's exhausting.
Yeah. Or having people feel sorry for you and all that. Like,
it's physically exhausting. It's not just the emotional and the mental part. It's a physical exhaustion that comes with dealing with depression and anxiety issues. Um, I got tired of my mom saying, looking at me like, "Are you okay?" Like it was almost like she was waiting for something like that other shoe to drop. And I was
Yeah.
like, "I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
going to the grocery store.
Yeah.
I'm in class. I'm at work. You're calling me. What's going on?" It was almost like I couldn't adult. And so I wanted to feel better. I wanted to go to college. I wanted to be in the dorm. I wanted to have
You
friends.
wanted to be
I
independent too.
wanted to be independent because I
Yeah.
was scared of losing that. Because I grew up in a strict household. I didn't get to be free like
Yeah. So
everybody
once
else.
you got to college, you was like, oh, yeah.
I wanted to keep my
Yeah.
freedom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, I'm doing everything right. I'm going to class. I'm getting good grades. I'm an honor student. I'm interviewing for all these internships. I'm interviewing for jobs. Like, I just want to be like everybody else. And so in order to do that, you have to put in the work. You have to go to therapy.
Golly. Like you took control over your own life. You wanted to you didn't want your agency to be taken away from you.
No.
And I applaud that. So at 30, you were working, I think this was 30. You were working in Jackson. Jackson, Michigan. You were a case manager, right? And then your father had a minor stroke,
Yes.
if you will,
Yes.
and that caused. And they were already divorced. He
Yes.
didn't have your mother there to really help him like that. That caused you to come back. You were in a relationship at that time.
Yeah.
So how did this person respond to that when you said, "Hey, I gotta leave. I'm quitting my job. I gotta go back home"? Because you said you only got a job because he was sort of, he couldn't take care of the finances all on his own. Right.
So I was in.
I'm not saying that's only why you got a
No.
job, but you got a job and you helped out. Yeah.
Right. So I was in this relationship right out of college. We dated for 5 years, and I was like, "Oh, great, we're gonna get married." And I got in this job with the state, and I was super excited. He wanted to be single, so we broke up at 30, and I ended up meeting someone else maybe like 6 months later.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yes.
In Jackson.
In
Okay,
Jackson.
gotcha.
So I was still working as a case manager in Jackson.
You ain't never had no problem getting a man. I'll tell you that.
I just have issues.
So good. I'm sorry.
So this guy was introduced to. My coworker was like, "Oh, you're such a nice young lady," and he's got a government job. You got a government job.
Stability right there. Yeah.
So she's like, I think you guys would be perfect. I didn't know he had severe issues. He was in the military.
Oh.
He came out and he never received his mental health care. And so he suffers with depression, bipolar, he has PTSD, and I didn't realize the extent of it until I was like deeply rooted into this relationship. He started getting abusive. He started off being very verbally and mentally and emotionally abusive. I didn't realize that until after I started sharing my story about my depression issues. It got to a point where it'd be like some days he would have his friends come over and he would literally like have me stand in front of them and he would go, "Well, look at her. She's fat. She's got depression issues. She's crazy. She's a psycho." And they would laugh. Like he would like line me up for comedy hour in front of them. It got to a point where he would tell his family and friends, "She's never going to leave me. She needs me to tell her what to do." He was timing me when I would get off work. So he knew exactly how long it took me to get from my job to his house. Because I still kept my apartment. But he had a key to it. And he would go through and check to make sure no men had been over there on the days that I was not at his house.
Wow.
He would time me. He would go, "It takes 15 minutes to get to your car from your building to the parking lot, from the parking lot to my driveway." And if I was a minute late, I got beat.
So it went from emotional abuse, verbal abuse to physical.
Yes. He started.
That was your first time.
That was my first time being in
Physically abusive relationship.
Yes.
Okay.
And I hit it well. People at work didn't know what was going on. they would notice bruises on my arms, but I would kind of lie about it, like, oh, I didn't even know that was
And you
there.
didn't
And
tell your parents either, right?
my mom and dad did not know anything was going on. They knew I was struggling emotionally, but they thought maybe it was because of the job. Working in welfare is not
Oh
an
man,
easy
that's
job.
stressful in itself. I was
Yes.
going to ask you, like, how did you maintain that? Considering what you were going through, what you had been diagnosed with, that's a stressful job.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had to turn on the charm. I didn't start showing signs at work until the abuse got more severe. I would come to work and I was getting into it with coworkers. I had a program manager. He loved to target me. I was the youngest black woman there. He was an older white gentleman and he loved targeting me. He hated my hair. He made it known. He hated what I would wear to work. He made it known because I always dressed for work. A lot of my coworkers, it was like, are you coming to work or are you part of the
Yeah.
community that we're here to assist? So it's kind of like,
So you came dressed to impress and,
yeah,
professional.
exactly,
Yeah.
because that's how I was raised. And even at Cass, when I was in the business department, they would push that on us like professional dress,
Shout
dress
out
for
to
the
Cass,
job you
man.
want.
Shout out to Cass. Cass be preparing people for the real world. Yeah, go
It
ahead.
was like dress for the job
Yeah.
that you want. And so I was like, well, I like my job as a case manager because I got to help people. So even though I wasn't getting help, I was helping others. And I think that was where the balance came from.
Man, you said something else. You were saying that what did you say? You said purpose is helping other people while saving yourself.
Yes. So my purpose is in hopes of saving someone else because you only need to save one person. As I share my story, I do hope that I do save someone else while saving myself because it's healing to talk about and share your journey with other people.
But you know how important that is because some people think that some people think that they're finished healing.
Yes.
Right. But you acknowledge that it's this ongoing thing. So that's why you say saving myself, because it's like, no, listen, the trauma that I experienced doesn't have to define me, but it's always going to be a part of me. Yes. So I'm forever going to have to manage this thing.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
And then if I'm actually helping other people in the process, it kind of helps my stress because it gives me purpose.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Vulnerability takes strength. And
Here's another thing. Oh man, so listen, we got to get into the vulnerability. Well, first off, right, with the vulnerability thing, you got merch out there, right?
Yes.
Shirts that
Yes.
that people can buy, windbreakers. And one of the messages on the shirt is, and I think it's almost like you're engaged in a dialogue with somebody else, and they basically say that, what did they say? They say your trauma made you stronger.
Yes.
And you said, no, my trauma made me traumatized. My vulnerability made me stronger.
Yes.
So it's not the trauma that makes you stronger. It's the vulnerability and being able to express
exactly
and tell your story.
Yes.
Wow.
You have to be strong to be able to share what's going on with you. You could be traumatized all day, but I don't think that builds strength. I think talking about and sharing your journey and being vulnerable and very open is where your strength comes from.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like when people go through trauma, they silence themselves. They get isolated. You don't hear about it until they're pushed to that point. And then some people never share it. So to actually be strong, I feel like you have to be able to share your journey, your message, because you never know who's watching.
Yeah.
You never know who needs to hear someone else is going through the same thing to give them the strength to go get whatever help that they may need.
And it's like you kill two birds with one stone because it's freeing for you,
Yes.
but it's inspiring to other people who might be suffering in
Exactly.
silence as well. And how do you accept what happened in the past if you don't express it? So
Exactly.
you do have to develop the strength to be vulnerable enough to express it so that you can accept certain things and be able to move forward.
Right. I always tell people that my diagnosis never defined me. It's just a part of my story, and my story is a beautiful story. It may not be the fairy tale that everybody is assuming you should have. It may not have played out the way that I imagined it would play out, but it's the path that I was put on, and I enjoy it. I think it's beautiful the way that it's unfolding. I like that I had to go through so much stuff to get to this strength, this person. I don't think if I had experienced anything traumatic, I would be as strong. I would be as vocal. I would be as open. But I feel like being able to express myself and being okay with what happened to me and knowing that I'm not alone in this, and that just by opening my mouth, there's other women that are now coming out literally in droves. I get messages every day.
Okay, so when the abuse was happening in your relationship, so your first suicide attempt was at the age of 19.
Yes.
In college,
Yes.
at the Christian college.
Yes.
The second one came during this relationship.
Yes.
Okay, can you talk about that a little,
Yeah.
as much as you want? Yeah.
Yeah. So, that day, I'll never forget. I never forget those days.
Yeah.
But that day, I had asked him if I could do laundry at his house because I was tired of using the apartment laundry room. And he had his friends over, and he had been drinking. So it was a huge abuser of alcohol. So he's an alcoholic. And he had started experimenting with drugs, and I didn't know that until after. And he was like doing stuff, in front of his friends. And I was just like, why is he acting this way? He started getting abusive, like really verbally abusive. He started getting violent. He was punching holes in the wall. And then he embarrassed me in front of his friends. He threw all my laundry on the ground. He threw cigarette butts on it. And he was like, watch her clean it up. He threw like a hamburger on the ground. He was like, watch her eat it. And I was like, I'm not eating a hamburger off the floor. Like, I think at that point I was at a breaking point because I didn't understand why, if I was doing all this stuff for you, I was helping him pay his mortgage. I had bought him a new car. And this is with one government job. He had two. I was helping him take care of his son. I didn't understand like why he felt it was okay to
sacrificing the comfort of your own livelihood to help him out, but you didn't understand why he would do those things,
right? Yeah. And why I was the target because I didn't do anything to him. I'm not a perfect individual, but I never did anything to like embarrass him or anything like that. And I never forget. I just said, I'm tired. I can't do this anymore. Like my life, I'm stuck here. And that's the first thing I screamed out was, I'm stuck. I'm stuck here. And I broke down in tears. And he said, look at her. She's emotional. Now watch her get psycho. That's where psycho came from. And he said, watch her be crazy. And I was like, oh my God. Like all I could think about was like my character. Like, oh my God, I'm crazy. I'm psycho. What does this mean? Like I'm emotional because you're embarrassing me, but you're not connecting the dots because of your substance abuse.
Like you're focusing on my reaction as opposed to what instigated it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
So I said, I'm going to show him. That was the first thing I said. I'm going to show him. You want to mistreat me? I'm going to do something to get you back. It wasn't even the fact that I was hurting so bad. It was the fact that I felt like I needed to punish him for what he was doing to me.
That's like not only transparency, but just accountability. It was like I was doing this despite you, pretty much. Yeah. Wow. So go ahead.
And I had to work through that with therapy.
Yeah. No. Because I mean, I'm telling you right now, I've done that. I've been married for 12, 13. My wife, I've done stuff like that just to piss her off because when you know each other and you know where each other's soft spots are, you poke it because you know exactly how to hurt them. So. People are guilty of doing that, even if it's not at the most severe level, but people do that every day. But go ahead.
I said, okay, well, I'm going to show you. You want to embarrass me? And all I could think about in that emotion and in that impulse was, I'm going to harm myself. I ran into the bathroom. I knew where he kept everything. And I took a blade and I slit my wrist.
Wow. So the first time was at 19, you ingested something.
Yes.
And this time was actually
physically harming. Wow. Yes. And I said, see, watch this. And then
both of them?
Yeah. And then this one was the most deep.
Yeah.
This one, I only have like a small scar here.
Wow.
And he goes,
I actually see the one on the other. Yeah. Okay. Got you. Okay.
And he was like, did you just? I said, yep. And now you get to explain to my parents why I did this.
Whoa,
and I blacked out. I woke up in the hospital And they were like, we can't send you back home. I said, what do you mean? That was my very first time being told I was on a 72-hour psych hold. I said, what do you mean I can't go back home? I said, I'm fine. I said, I was just having an emotional moment. I was having a breakdown. I was like, I'm just having an emotional moment. I got to go to work. That's the first thing I said to them. You got to let me out. I got to go to work. It's not that I didn't have medical leave or, time off. I had plenty of vacation time. But I was like, I got to go to work. You can't keep me in here. They were like, you don't see there's something going on with you. I said, no, it's not. No, it's not.
It's interesting that you mentioned work. Work was the thing that made you feel somewhat normal and a
Right.
part of society.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm
I
sorry.
said, I have clients. I got cases. I have to go to work. They're like, no, ma'am, we have to get you the help that you need. And that was the first time I had heard them saying, we are here for you. We are not here for ourselves. We want you to get help.
Like they actually care.
They actually care. So I ended up in Havenwick Mental Hospital. I was on the highly functional floor. So I just want to draw the layout for that.
Yeah, not like with the straight jacket and
Right.
yeah.
I was on the highly functional floor. They only kept me for 4 days. The first thing they said was, you're just sad. And I said, I know, but you also have deeply rooted issues. And that was the very first time I was actually able to express what happened to me at 8. So I first told it to my psychiatrist and my therapist and my social worker, because they give you a social worker. And they said, now we understand your traumas. And so I had group therapy, I had art therapy. That's where I learned that I was a creative person. Music therapy and art therapy helped me maintain those traumas, and I got to draw and color out my feelings.
So that's why even with the Hope Jar,
Yes.
you have a sisterhood, a community of
Yes.
women, and they can do like arts and craft
Yes.
projects and things
Yes.
like that. That's where that came
That's
from.
where that came
The
from.
importance of not only just seeking help professionally, but finding your tribe.
Exactly.
And doing it together, not feeling like you're in it alone, right?
Right.
That's where that came from.
That's where that came from. They make you do group therapy all day. So mental hospitals are therapeutic environments. They turn you off from the world. So there's no phone. You can still call, but it's a pay phone. So there's no internet access, no cell phones, certain clothes, no drawstrings, things like that you can harm yourself with. But literally from 7 a.m. to about 6 p.m., we have therapy. We break for lunch. You see your psychiatrist team and they give you your medication, but literally you're in therapy all day, whether it's art therapy or music therapy or group therapy. And I'll never forget sitting in a circle with all these women. I think it was like 20 of us. And all walks of life, mothers, grandmothers, employers, business owners. We're all sitting in this room talking about exactly what happened to us. And I was just floored about how many of us were suffering with the same thing. Oh my God, you dealt with this? Wait, I dealt with this.
That was your first time realizing that, no, this isn't just me.
I didn't feel alone. It was the first time I actually got emotional in therapy, because I was like, finally, I'm not by myself. It's not just me walking around in the world with depression. It's not just me walking around in the world feeling traumatized. Like my roommate, her husband was part of her trigger every day. Like she would go home and he would just belittle her every single day. And I was like, wow, I just came out of that.
Yeah. You mentioned being an empath earlier, so you feel deeply for people. How do you feel in retrospect about the gentleman who abused you in a relationship when you were 30? Do you vilify him in a way, or do you look at it like, man, he was struggling with his shit too, coming out of the service, not getting the help that he needed? So what's that process like of actually forgiving, not necessarily wanting to be back in a relationship, but more so, I forgive you.
Right.
I don't condone what you did, but I forgive you. Yeah.
So I look at forgiveness as for me. I can forgive what you did, or I can forgive the person that you are. I'll never forget, but I can forgive you. Forgiveness is for me, so I can heal and move on.
Golly. That's because a lot of people think that it's for the other person. No, it's for me. So I don't hold on to this.
Exactly.
Wow.
It took me a while. I was in that situation for 6 years. It
Oh,
took
that was 6 years?
6 years of abuse.
From the time you were 30 to 36? Wow.
What helped me get out was the fact that one, I had a miscarriage.
Oh, man. Sorry to hear that. Yep.
He had beat me within an inch of my life in front of a woman he was cheating on me with. And I miscarried. And then
As a result of that?
as a result, and then 2 weeks later, my dad died in front of me. And I just remember shutting down completely emotionally. I wasn't working at the time because I had taken time off to take care of my dad. And
Right. I remember. Yep. Okay.
I was like, emotionally, I can't feel anything. I just think for 2 weeks planning my dad's funeral, I was just a zombie. And I was like, he can't, in my mind, I kept thinking my music can't hurt me anymore.
Yeah.
In the beginning, yes, I villainized him like crazy. I was angry because I had lost my kid. I was angry because my dad had died and he was putting me through so much trauma and stress, and I should have been focusing on my dad's care.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
I was angry because I wasn't my best self. I felt like I had lost me. And so for a while, yes, he was a villain in my story. And I realized that for me to heal from everything that had happened to me, I had to forgive him. And it was tough. I asked my therapist, I said, what am I going to do? How am I going to forgive him? Because I cannot forget what he did. I cannot forget the added traumas he caused. I cannot forget 6 years of abuse. So what do I do? Like, how do I get through that? And she said, talk about it every day. Remember why you went through that, and remember how much stronger you are after that. Remember that your dad would never want you to continue to suffer through that. And I had to say one day, I just looked in the mirror. I just remember I looked in the mirror and said, you know what? I forgive him.
Wow.
It wasn't like a big fanfare. It was like, I forgive him. I was able to block his number. We were blocked on social media. I cut his family off, even his son. And I had known his son since he was 13. I knew that I needed to completely heal. And in order to do that, I had to remove myself from anything that involved him. To say it was easy, it was not. He threatened to pop up to my house. He would find ways to get in contact with me to the point where I had to get the police involved. But I was determined because I wanted to heal. I wanted to be able to move on. I wanted to say I could still get into a healthy relationship because I'm deserving of that.
It's not only the forgiveness part, but it's also accountability in the sense that if I stay here,
I'm going to die.
then I'm just as culpable, right?
If I stay in this relationship, I'm going to die.
I'm gonna. Yeah, right.
If I stay in this relationship, I'm not going to be able to cope with anything. If I stay in this relationship, I'm never going to know what it's like to find my strength. I'm always going to feel weak because I'm not strong enough to leave. Why can't I leave?
So you kind of have to take that first
I
step.
have to take that first step. So first I had to accept my part in it. And I think for so long, we always blame the other person. We never accept our part. So I had to accept my part.
Yeah.
I had to say, you know what? I accept the fact that I allowed you into my space for 6 years and then take accountability and pack my stuff and leave when you first showed me who you are. So
I ignored those
fault.
signs because I was hoping that it would be different. Didn't want to believe it. Was in denial. Was thinking that things would get better or that I could handle these things. I got you.
That's my fault.
Yeah.
And I take accountability for that. I accept the fact that I knew I was better than what you told me I was. I know I was enough. I accept the fact that I allowed you to break me down. I accept that. I take accountability for that. Now it's time to find my strength. Now it's time to remember I am strong enough. Now it's time to remember I am worthy enough of more than what you are able to provide for me. I know that I'm stronger than I was yesterday. I know I'm not a weak person, and it's okay to be emotional.
Wow. And so let me ask you a question. Before your father passed, God rest his soul, did you forgive him for certain things? Okay.
I forgave my dad. I always get asked this question a lot because for a long time, I didn't feel protected by my dad after what happened to me. But yeah, I forgave my dad. I did not want him to go into death thinking that I hated him. I love my dad with everything in me, even with his behavior, and although it wasn't something that I necessarily, liked or approved of or whatever, I love my dad. He was still my dad. He still was there for me, even though we had our issues. I forgave him.
It's the same thing earlier we said about society, just like they want to throw away people with mental illness and not consider all of the good things about these people, not consider that they're full human beings who exist on a wide spectrum, not consider the fact that they have redeemable qualities. So the fact that you didn't just completely throw him away because you had so many good memories, and he's part and parcel why you have been strong enough to overcome a lot of these things. And I just love that, man. Yeah. That's unconditional love.
That's unconditional love. And I appreciate my dad. I think some people would say, I would hate my dad, and I appreciate my dad. I think had he not done half the things that he did or shown me, in some ways, retrospect, what I don't really want in a man, you have to love and appreciate that. Some stuff, my dad had really good qualities. He was good with finances. He made sure we were taken care of. He just didn't know how to love.
Yeah.
And I'm always going to be determined to know what that's like to be in a really healthy, loving, committed relationship. But I had to be able to find that within myself first. And I think that's always going to be important is if I don't love myself, I can't expect nobody else to love me. Not my parents, not my sister, not in a committed relationship. I can only know what it's like. I really need to know what it's like to love myself.
Self-love. Yeah. And wow. And your mother, shout out to her, because she carried a lot of stuff for years, and you guys had no idea what was going on. So she managed the household and dealt with what she was dealing with. And that has a lot to do with how strong you are today. So just got to give a shout out to moms.
Definitely.
Wow. So yeah, healing through vulnerability. You ended up sharing your story after that attempt, the second attempt, right? Or was it after?
It was my fourth attempt.
Fourth attempt, because you said it was two in 2022. It was one that took place 4/28, so April 28th, and another one that took place May 25th.
Yes.
Right. And you shared your story, and you got so much feedback.
Yeah. So it wasn't planned. That's
right. But it went viral. It was It caught. And that's where healing through vulnerability was born. Yeah.
Yes. Wow. I did not ever plan to share my mental health struggles because I like playing the facade for people. It was like,
I got everything together. I'm good. Yeah.
I was going on. So, but I'll never forget. I was going through a lot last year. My grandmother, she had turned 89. She was transitioning 2 weeks after my birthday, and I had taken care of her for 10 years. She had severe dementia.
Your grandmother on
my mom's side.
On your mom's side. Okay. So I want to also, during this period between the age of maybe early 30s and up to now, you lost your paternal grandfather, maternal grandfather. You lost your maternal grandmother.
Yes.
You lost your real father in front of your eyes. Yes. And now you lost your last grandparent not too long ago, right? So that was in what year?
2022.
So you're talking about 5 deaths of really important people over a short span of time, which
and the family dog.
And the family. People be underestimating them dogs, man. They important too. So that's where the complicated grief came from.
I never got a chance to grieve.
Yeah.
My dad's father died. I didn't really get a chance to grieve his death because I had to be strong for my dad. Then 8 months later, my mom's dad died. I didn't really get a chance to grieve his death because I was in the abusive situation. My mom was getting married. My sister was getting married. So there was no time to grieve.
On top of the fact that you already dealing with a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Then my dad's mom pulled us aside and she said, I'm tired of living. I don't want to do dialysis anymore. Yeah. And so literally 2 weeks later, she died. My dad couldn't handle the fact that his mom had passed, and then he died. And I didn't have a chance to grieve. People like to assume that I grieved my dad's death, but I didn't have that window because my sister was pregnant with my nephew. And the first thing I said was, I got to pull it together. I
Oh yeah,
can't.
because you were basically in the bed. You
Yes,
couldn't get out of
I couldn't
bed.
get out of bed. And I said, I can't grieve
You got to be
like
there for
this.
your
I
sister.
got to be there for my sister. She's in a high risk pregnancy with my nephew. She's grieving my dad as well. And so I have to pull it together. I'm the oldest.
Mm-hmm.
So I gave myself maybe 2 months. And it was like, okay, you got to get up now.
Mm-hmm.
COVID hit. And I think that allowed me an opportunity to kind of slow life down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't like grieve.
Mm-hmm.
My nephew came and I was busy doting on him. And so I didn't get a chance to like really be
Process
sad.
things and stuff
Exactly.
like that. So that's what led to the two suicide attempts in 2022.
Right.
Then you shared the story. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I shared, well, yeah, 2022. So
Yeah.
my grandmother died. My mom couldn't handle her death. My mom checked out. I didn't have help planning her funeral. So I was forced
Planning your
to,
grandmother's funeral.
right. So I was forced to be that point of contact. And I hated it. People are like, you did this for your mom. That's so nice. And I hated it.
Yeah.
It was a reminder of everything I had already struggled with when it came to grief.
Yeah. And then keep on top of this, you're the oldest of the three, so a
Yes.
lot of the responsibility fell
Fell
on
on
your
me.
shoulders naturally.
Yes. And I'll never forget, like, I buried her the same day I buried her. I ended up in the hospital in intensive care. I had sepsis and my organs were shutting down. And I was like, well, I'm grieving. I got depression. I'm in ICU. I was dating this person at the time. And I'll never forget, 2 weeks after getting out the hospital, he came to my house. He sat on my porch and he said, I got someone else pregnant. And I just think in that moment, I had checked out of reality.
Whoa.
Because I'm like, we have been seeing each other for over a year. What do you mean? Like, when did this happen? It was the events that happened after that forced me to start being a lot more open about what was going on. I was transitioning jobs, so I had worked in finance for a little bit. I was making great money, but the stress was unbelievable, and my emotional health was taking a toll. It was like tanking fast, and I was transitioning back to case management. So I was like, I can't deal with all this stress. Like, emotionally, how does someone handle like a death, then being in intensive care, then transitioning jobs? Now I'm being told the guy that I've been seeing got someone else pregnant and then was lying about it.
Shoot. Wow. Yeah.
It was like, how do you handle that? So I'm going to work every day. I'm not knowing how I got to work because I was checked out. I was coming home having these emotional breakdowns. I just have to shout out my sister, Tanisha. She went to cast with us.
Tanisha Reed
Yes.
on Instagram. Hold on, y'all. On Instagram, she's a mogul_maker. She helps entrepreneurs. She helps them grow their audience. She helps them generate consistent revenue. She helped me get my LLC for TinBridge way back when I lived in California when I didn't know or have a clue of what to do. And she told you to allow people to love you where you are.
Yes. It's
Shout out to Tanisha. Go ahead. I'm
shout out
sorry.
to her. It was so awkward how we met. I had got on Facebook April 1st last year after everything that had happened. And I was like, I'm sick of this. Like, why does these bad things keep happening to me? And so I got on Facebook and I told people, like, this was going to be my last status. Like, I had 38 beautiful years of life and I was tired. And I don't know what pushed me to go to work, but I went to work that day. And she was one of the people that reached out. She was like, I feel like I need to take you to lunch, or I feel like I need to take you to dinner.
Shout out to Tanisha. Golly.
Can you call me when you're ready and let's go out? Someone loves you. And I was like, well, who is this girl? Because I didn't know who she was. I knew she was the cast, but I didn't know her. I was like, who is this girl that keeps, I got home after going to work and my coworkers knew something wasn't right. Got home, I got on Facebook Live because my phone was blowing up all day. Like, people Facebook calling me, texting me, Instagram DMing me, Like, we don't want you to do this. Like, please just talk to us. And I was like, I don't know how to communicate how hurt I am. Like, I'm broken right now. I don't know how to communicate that to you. I got on Facebook Live and I was like, why am I on Facebook Live? I had instant regret.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
like, why am I on Facebook Live? I got on Facebook Live and I said, I don't know how to express this to you all, but I'm lost. I'm broken. I'm hurting.
Wow.
This morning I had decided that I don't want to live anymore. I don't know how to express this to you all. I appreciate all the love. I appreciate you all
Oh
understanding.
shoot, you got me. Oh my God, this man. Go ahead. Go ahead.
And I said, but I don't know how to tell you all that I don't know what my worth is, but I promise you all I'm fighting to find it. And I spent 45 minutes expressing myself, exposing myself. I said, a lot of you all look at me as this very strong individual, but I'm not. And I'm hurting and but I'll be back. And I'll never forget, she said, I got off live and she said, give me your phone number.
Wow.
I gave her my phone number. She called me. She said, meet me here this time. You better come. I'm going to find your house. I got in the car and I went to dinner with her. And that was the day that we became family.
Yeah.
I never forget after that, I was struggling so bad with him. I was telling him, I didn't understand why he did what he did, like why he was lying. Like, I had refinanced his house. Was buying all this stuff for him. I was supporting his business. And I didn't understand why someone would just hurt someone like that and not explain or not apologize. Like, I didn't even get a sorry.
Yeah, getting somebody else pregnant, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, at least admit what was, but I couldn't get that. And I'll never forget, like, I had called him. I said, I'm feeling like I'm getting ready to self-harm because I was still in this fog. He said, I don't care if you die. Hung the phone up on me. And that was what pushed me to want to walk into traffic that night. And I remember my mom calling the police for a welfare check. And the police said, do you want to go to the hospital? And I kept saying, I got to go to work. I can't. Please just let me go home. I broke down in tears in front of the police. Like, please just let me. But I went live to show my whole interaction with the police. And people are like, well, you wanted to end your life that night, but you didn't want to die by the police. And I said, no, it's all about control at this point.
Yeah, you want to control how
I
it
want to
happens.
control
Yeah.
my situation. So, no, I didn't want the police involved. So they let me go home. They didn't force me to go back to the hospital. But 3 weeks later, I had spoken to him. And he was continuously breaking me down in person. And I was like, okay, you got to stop. I can't handle it. I'm getting ready to have a severe crisis here. And all I kept thinking was, if I die tonight in front of him, he's not going to care. I ended up going home. And I went to work. I remember arguing with this individual on the way to work. And all of a sudden, like, I was told to come to my boss's office. And she was like, you got a complaint. I was like, what do you mean I got a complaint? Because I hadn't gotten a caseload yet. I had just transferred back to my position. I was like, well, this is odd. I'm in training. Like, how do you get a complaint and people don't even know you work here? He had told his baby mom or whoever she is to him that I was, like, harassing them and that I was threatening them. And I was in shock. I was just so in shock because I hadn't talked to him in 3 weeks. And he had actually invited me over to have a conversation with him for closure. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she had filed a complaint at my job to get me fired. She was like, this girl is mentally unstable. And I just remember breaking down in my director's office. And I was like, this is not what happened. This is I spill, and I never tell my personal business at work, but my life was on the line.
Your livelihood, yeah.
And I was like, this is all I've been going through with this individual. And I didn't know who she was. So I was like, how does she know where I work? How does she know my name? it came to me that he needed an alibi because he was scared I was going to expose him on social media. I don't have that kind of evil tendency. Like, for me, I don't like people knowing that I'm going through a heartbreak. Which is why I hardly post people that I date or anything like that. Because some stuff is just private.
Absolutely. And you don't want to expose yourself
Exactly.
in that type of way anyway.
So I just was so amazed that they would go to such
lengths to try to,
And I was like, but why call my job? At that moment, that is when I checked out again. I was in my boss's office and I was like, I'm not going to live. And my director looked at me and she said, excuse me. I said, I'm not going to live.
This was May of 2022.
Yeah. She said, well, what do you mean? I said, he's destroying me. One person, one lie at a time. He is destroying my character. I can't even come to work anymore. I can't do this. Like, my family is, half my family is gone. My livelihood is gone. It was just like a lot that was happening. I was like, now people think I'm this psychotic, unstable person, and that's not even what happened. He was driving this negative narrative about me, and I was like, I don't know who else he's told. Like, it was so many alarms going off that morning. My director was like, I have to drive you home because I don't think you're gonna make it home. And I said, well, how do you know? And she was like, I have a feeling you're going to harm yourself on the way home. It's almost like she could read my mind. I was going to get in my car and try to harm myself, and she knew that. So she dropped me off at home. 2 hours later, I was on the phone with Tanisha. I was on FaceTime with her, and I was telling her what happened. I said, there's going to be an investigation at my job. I don't understand it. I don't know what I did to him to make them do this to me. I never contacted his job for my money that he took, because he was taking this girl on vacation on my dime.
Wow.
It's like, I was like, I never contacted her job or anything like that, so I don't even know who this girl is. But she said, well, hold on, I'm gonna come sit with you. I said, no, it's time for me to go. And I remember I had a handful of medication that I found around my room. And she said, well, I don't want you to take anything. Can you just hold on till I get there? I'm on my way. She was like, if I have to lay with you all night, if I have to sit with you all night.
Damn, Tanisha. Wow.
I'm going to come to you. Please hold on. Please don't do that. I had no idea she had built a strong bond with my mom and sisters already. She said, you know, I can't do this. She hung up, called my mom and sisters immediately, said, I'm on my way, but please call 911. And I remember my mom coming into my room, and that was the last thing I remember. I had blacked out. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. I was in Providence Hospital. I remember a little bit of the doctor saying he had to pump my stomach to get me to come to. And he was like, well, what happened? I said, why did you save me? That was the first thing I said was, why did you save me? I was ready. Like, my dad is up there waiting for me. And he was like, you got to go to the hospital part. You have to be on a psych hold. And I knew at that moment that I needed to continue on to get help. I was not going to survive. I ended up in the hospital for about a week. I got therapy, got a social work team finally. I got out. The important part when you go to the hospital is to make sure you have a team and a support system when you get out.
Yeah.
Because that's how you stay out, and that's how you stay on track with your treatment. But Tanisha was there every step of the way. I could call her every day from the hospital, and she would just say, okay, how are you doing? She came and visited me with my sister. She was support to my mom, who found me unresponsive. And that was hard for my family. It's still hard for Tanisha. She saw me
at
on
your
this
worst state.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's another point. It's like your trauma can traumatize other people too. So, you know, I'm gonna be honest with you, Andrea. I could talk to you for a million hours. I can talk to you for a million hours. Yeah, just the fact that you found your purpose through taking on more responsibility while you were already suffering. And when you take on more responsibility, that could feel like adding more suffering to your plate. But through that responsibility, you found your purpose. And through your purpose, you found enough meaning to sustain you through the peaks and valleys that one experiences throughout life, through the tough times, the bad times. The meaning is what actually sustains you. Having meaningful people around you, creating meaningful experiences and meaningful moments, and I don't know, just having a job that's meaningful. Yeah. And I think you using healing through vulnerability to heal and help guide other people along their path to healing is therapeutic, and it's actually balancing you and keeping you where you are. That's like a life hack, really. Yes. It's like if you want to try to make the suffering better, take on more responsibility in hopes that you'll find your purpose and find the meaning that you need.
There's purpose in your pain.
Yeah.
People think you go through painful experiences and there's no reason behind it. I'm finding that as I share my story, it empowers other women to share theirs.
Yes. Yeah.
I get hundreds of messages every day.
I know. Yeah. I bet.
Of women that are going through abusive relationships, women who have lost themselves, women who can't find purpose. And I tell people all the time, I fell into mine. Like, it wasn't something I planned.
You wasn't looking for it.
I wasn't looking for it.
It just happened.
It just happened.
And it gave you a new meaning and purpose to keep going.
Yeah. I feel alive and strong every time I share my story with someone.
Because when you avoid it, when you hide, like you were in the bed at that, you actually get weaker over time, but you get stronger the more you expose yourself to the things that you fear, and the more that you express yourself and tell your story.
The one thing that I've noticed over the last year was I smile a lot more.
Yeah. You've been smiling throughout this whole conversation.
Because it doesn't hurt as much as it did. Yeah. It hurts less and less. And I get proud of myself every day because I'm stronger for being vulnerable and being open. There's always going to be stigmas behind the story I share. People are always going to question, is this going to be the moment that the ball drops or things like that? But I am who I am. I can no longer continue to adjust to fit a narrative. The whole purpose of healing through vulnerability was to provide a safe space so people can be who they are, whether that's someone that suffers with bipolar or personality disorder or mental health or mental illness, because it's a silent disease. A lot of people, because you can't see it or how the TV and film have played it, it's like some people want us to go out in public and just shield knives and be naked in the street or something like that. But we are normal individuals. People. Yeah. We just need help coping with certain life triggers.
Yeah.
My depression causes impulsiveness as far as self-harm. I've never had the character of wanting to harm other people. But as I continue on with my treatment, because I know the importance of treatment, as I continue on sharing my story and helping other women, those impulsiveness aspects are non-existent. In fact, I graduated from that, according to my therapist, about 6 months ago.
Oh, congratulations, man. Wow, yeah.
And sometimes she questions, she says, well, do you want to adjust your therapy schedule? I'm like, no. Let's keep it going.
Let's keep it going. So shout out to you, man, because since May of 2022, there hasn't been another attempt, and I'm thankful for that, and I wish I had talked to you more in high school, because I didn't realize how beautiful of a person inside and out you are. So please continue to fight, not only for yourself but for us, because the world is a better place with you in it. So if you can look in this camera and tell people, where can they purchase the HTV kit? I know you also have Unlock Your Purpose Mastermind 6-week course. You have like the merch with the shirts with the phrases on it and the windbreakers, and just the journal and planner. You have a bunch of things. So where can they find you on social media? Where can they find you?
Okay.
in general?
Well, you can find me on Instagram, Healing Through Vulnerability. I do go live Monday, Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as well as Wednesday for our Wellness Wednesday tip of the week between 12 and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can purchase any merchandise at healingthroughvulnerability.com. A third of those proceeds go towards a mental health fund that is to help people with any co-payments they may have when it comes to medications for mental health, transportation to therapy appointments. So any donation or any purchase goes, a third of that goes to that. You can spread the word. You can follow me on Facebook as well as with Healing Through Vulnerability. Or if you want to see me in person, you can find me at Event Spaceology in Warren at 28032 Warren Road.
Wow, I can't believe it's the first out of 22 conversations. It's the first one where I shed a tear on camera. So now, everybody thought I was just a gangster because I'm from Detroit, and they gonna listen. Don't be out here trying to test me on the streets, y'all. This was an anomaly right here, obviously, and so I appreciate you so much, Andrea Burks. Thank you, and conversations with TinBridge, y'all. Peace.